Today I want to talk a little bit about weedless jigs, crappie jigs, weedless crappie jigs. Right here's a traditional. They have a weed guard with several bristles, real stout. Okay, and that ain't gonna work. Well, good evening, folks. It's Richard here. This evening I've got to get some honeydews done because my wife, she went grocery shopping. Okay, and if I don't get these done before she gets back, she'll knock knots on my head faster than I can count them. But in the meantime, what I want to do today is show y'all how, or my version of the weedless jig, and the reason why I like to make them myself and I'll fish with them. There's a lot of different weedless jigs on the market when it comes to crappie fishing. I'm talking specifically about crappie jigs, weedless versions of crappie jigs, and they haven't changed in the last few years, and I have to modify them and do several tweak around on them to get them to really hook a fish the way I want them to. I don't like to miss crappie. When I get bit, I want to put that fish over the gunnel. And well, without saying too much more, I just want to show y'all how I do it, what I've come up with that works. I know it has improved my catch ratio tremendously. Okay, here's a traditional crappie jig right here, weedless, and you notice that the weed guard is just about the same as this bass jig. Same thing, real stiff. And now let's keep in note this, that crappie have weak jaw muscles. Okay, they're soft biters. Now they'll inhale this jig just like a bass will inhale this jig. They'll open their mouth, flare their gills, and inhale the bait in. They don't bite it, they inhale the bait in. But their jaw muscles, as y'all know, are real weak on a crappie. Now for me to fish with this particular jig, which is a traditional one, I have to tweak it. Tweaking means I have to modify it for my bite to catch ratio to be consistent. I have to first off cut it off, which isn't any problem. See, I've used these for years. I'm not knocking the jig or the jig manufacturer. I'm just saying it's just things you have to do. Okay, it's still too stiff for me. I can catch a few fish, but I want to catch a lot of fish. Everything that bites, I want to at least get a hook into him. So I'm going to have to cut about half of these bristles off, if not more, to get it weak enough to get a good hook set on that fish. Now this is just my opinion, me speaking. Another thing is, most of these weed guards in these crappie jigs comes out just like that. I don't like that. Now I'm still, again, I'm not knocking manufacturers of these jigs, but I'm just stating a fact. Because when I'm skipping boat dogs or shooting them, you're going to hit cross braces, you're going to hit posts and all kinds of stuff. A lot of times those weed guards will come out. It's just I'm stating a fact now. Okay, so let's make us one then. Let's make what we want, or what we feel like is the best. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this collar off the hook shank. I'm going to take it off flush with the jig head. Okay, once that's done, I like to use at least 30 to 40 pound test line. Now this is just monofilament line. Now really, if you fish in real deep, clear lakes and you're wanting to fish brush piles and things of that nature, you're probably better off with fluorocarbon line. The difference between fluorocarbon line and mono is that when the sunlight hits this mono, it glows, it reflects. Okay, fluorocarbon, it don't. Light penetrates through it, making the line invisible. But here in my part of the country, I'm fishing mainly dingy water. I don't think it makes any difference because I can't really tell the difference. But if you want a universal jig, if you're going to make you some of these weedless jigs up like this, I would suggest getting some 35 to 40 pound test fluorocarbon to do it. Alright, let's cut us a piece of this mono off. Now I'm going to cut it about 3.5 inches long right here. And then what I'm going to do is take this line and go past the bend of the hook just a little bit, like that. And this is dollar store dental floss right here. That's all it is. And I'm going to leave about 3 inches right here to work with. And I'm going to start wrapping right here about even with the hook point. Alright. Let me cut a little bit more of this line off so we can work with it a little better. Okay. Now I'm going to wrap this real tight, folks. Now, I mean, I'm putting it on it right here. I'm putting a steam on it. And I'm going to wrap it plumb up to the ball, or to the ball of the jig, and I'm going to come back again. So that's twice. Then again for the 3rd time. And then the 4th. Now we're going to cut this off and tie 2 overhand knots or granny knots to lock it up. There's 1. And then 2. I'm a little bit slow. I'm having to keep my hands in frame. Okay. Now I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut that off close as I can. Then I'm going to cut this tag off right here close as I can. Alright, the next step is to roll this line, this mono, perfect in line with the eyelet. In line, just like that. Okay. Next step is to pull this mono down even with the hook point. That way to be in line with it. And then crimp this mono down right here. Crimp it like that. Okay. That forms the angle that you need. And right here, I go past the hook point just a little bit. About 3/16 of an inch. Like that. Next step. There's 2 types of super glue that I use. And it's the red top, which is like water, and the green. This is the gel type. I'm going to use the red first. Okay, let me lay this down and get the top off of it. It has glued itself. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. Then I'm going to tack it right here. Right where all that comes together. You don't need a whole lot. Now this, and I'm going to tack it right here too. Ooh, it's running everywhere. Okay, now what happens with the red top glue, it's like water. It soaks in through the dental floss and to the hook. So you got a tack right here that bonds. Same thing right here. The 2 knots that I made, and the fishing line itself and the hook are all bonded because that glue soaked through. Let that dry for 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, because if you don't, you'll get your fingers glued together. Then we'll do our next step. Okie dokie. This thing is dried. I had to wait so I could work with it. Now, this thing is tacked, and I mean tacked well. It's not going to go anywhere. So, let's take this jig and rig it. Now, it may not end up straight. I'm having to keep everything in frame, folks, but this is just a demonstration. Well, that ain't too bad. Okay. And I like to use the green. This is the gel type super glue because it's not so runny. And I like to put a little here and a little here. And then push that back, that bait, head back, and keep everything in line. That's not a real pretty deal there because I'm having to keep everything in frame. But when I make these up, they're neat. And another thing is, once this sets up, you can fish with it and fish with it and fish with it and fish with it. Now, I'll tweak around on this just a little bit sometimes, but fluorocarbon would be your best bet, especially in real deep, clear lakes. Because a crappie jig is so light, this single guard, in my opinion, will come through the cover just fine. Okay, there's not much weight coming. It's not like a bass jig where they're heavy, and a soft biting fish like a crappie can inhale that bait in and clamp that down, and you'll catch him. You ain't gonna miss no fish on that. Very few if you do. If you do, it's because a little bitty crappie. Like the other day I was at Neely Henry and they'd grab the tail and that was it, and I'd miss them. But most of the time, even them little bitty fish like that, I'll catch them with this. I mean, and I've been having a lot of success with it. I just wanted to share that. Alrighty, folks, that's my version of a weedless crappie jig. Now, I've done tested it. It works well. Deep brush, okay. Treetops, it's laying down in the water. Of course, you want to fish a treetop. You know, trees that's laying down in the water, always fish where the branches are coming towards you. And that way you can let the jig fall in and come up through and out and just bump those limbs, you know. It's a reflexive action type strike. It's a lot like a crankbait fishing for bass. You know, for years I fished in tournaments, and if you're not bumping into or veering off of an object, it's hard to get a reflex action type strike. And that's all it is from a crappie. Coming through brush or bumping post up under docks or rocks or whatever, instinctively a crappie will reflex a bite out of a crappie just the same as it will fishing a crankbait for bass or a spinnerbait for bass. It's that bumping into that triggers that instinctive strike. But I want to say thank y'all for watching, and then thank you very much for all the great comments. And I think she's back. All right, and I better get busy around here. Yeah, I better. But, and remember, woo-wee, go fishing when you can, but on it good. Thank y'all for watching.